Emotions drive people, people drive performance. This is a little teaser in today's episode. My name is Mark Bracknell. I'm the Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. Welcome to a new episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast. Today we welcome on Paul Cheetham. Paul has a history of being a HR professional before leaving a full-time employment to start his own business, understanding working with businesses, specifically around emotions and emotional intelligence. I couldn't wait to have Paul on. Paul is someone who I have worked closely with. He's worked with my team, he's worked with my clients, he does a lot within the manufacturing space. And we really dug into understanding yourself, understanding your emotions, how that can have a effect when you're managing people. This episode is going to challenge you. It's going to really make you reflect and analyze what sort of thinker you are, how you are at work, how you are at home. We had comparisons to parenting, to management, and it's really going to make you stop, listen, and think about what you do on a day-to-day basis to try and get the best out of your people, but actually more importantly, get the best out of yourself. And that was the overriding message for me, that everything starts from you. And if you can analyze your thoughts and you can do those little things differently, but actually more importantly, if you can really understand why you do something in the first place, then you can start to look to change that. This was a great episode. It was powerful. You're going to learn a lot from this, and I'd really appreciate any feedback on this one. Paul is tremendous, so please check him out. Please follow him on LinkedIn. But for now, please subscribe to the show, sit back, have a coffee, watch, listen, whatever you want to do, and hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you very much. Excellent. Right, a massive warm welcome to Paul Cheetham, someone I know extremely well and I've had the benefit of working with myself. So I'm really looking forward to this one. How are you, Paul?
Good today. I think I just quickly alluded before this started. I've got a bit of an infected thumb, so this is like dissipating. So I don't want to put any, off people off their cornflakes or whatever. But yeah, so aside from that, I actually feel quite relieved and light of mind and spirit today. So maybe it's a good day for a podcast. I'm glad it wasn't on Monday this week. I think I was feeling quite in pain and tense and anxious and stuff like that.
So basically, if anyone's watching on YouTube, switch over to Spotify or Apple now, so you can just listen to him. Right, the first question I'll ask you, because it's the same question I ask everyone that comes on the show. What does it mean to you, Paul, to be a leader?
What does it mean to me to be a leader? Sorry, I've been working I'll just say this, I've been working in the thinking environment recently.
Yeah.
And it just, there's lots to it, but like one of the big things that it gives actually is gives you the confidence and comfort to be able to create some space for yourself to really genuinely think. I think in this modern society and modern workplaces, I think there's an expectation where we feel like we've got to respond, and that creates urgency, and sometimes that leads us to do and say things that we don't mean to. So yes, so hence the pause there. So I hope that doesn't spoil the podcast and that
No, I completely agree.
5 or 6 seconds going, what the hell, Paul's just fell asleep. um, um, so what does what does leadership mean for me? And it's really strange because I think we often look at leaders and we see people who like the Lion King, they're standing on the rock and surveying the savannah with all of their sort of serfs, all of the other animals who sort of are somehow subservient to them. Um, but I always say that leadership starts with you, and leadership isn't a work thing. It's like, how are you leading yourself in life? And that might be actually being able to know what's going on. So actually being able to see yourself in a really true way, first and foremost, because if I don't think you do, then actually the rest of it's likely to be lost a little bit because you haven't got like some good concrete knowledge of yourself. Um, and by all means, do your own self-reflection, I think, with that, but actually get feedback from others, really important. I'm very fortunate in that my wife and me 2 daughters are really good at giving me feedback. as to what I
Whenever you
do.
don't want it, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if it's sort of unwanted and it comes unbidden.
Yeah.
So, but it's really powerful having that gift. I'll just tell a little story. So, I remember once we were walking down the coast, we went for a walk, and they'd said something, telling a story, and they said, "You've got something funny to say, Dad, haven't you?" And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And they said, like, you have this like panting dog face. It's sort of like, "I've got something funny to say." And I go, "Oh my
Anticipation.
goodness, I
Yeah.
didn't realize I had this."
Yeah.
So I was really then conscious afterwards to like, okay, every time I thought I was about to say something funny or clever or witty, very conscious of not having a panting dog face. Um, so sorry, a long bit, but like to demonstrate that having self-awareness is really good, and that reflection and getting that from others and being open to feedback from others, I think, is a core tenet of leadership for me. And then it's being able to use that information to make like more decisions, like better decisions, more thought through conscious decisions. So we all tend to react, like, don't we, based on how we normally react. And that's different for each of us. So I'll think about like one of my brothers, like who just would hate to get up on stage and whatever and give a speech. Or I quite like it sometimes, depending on the topic. But I'm not put off by the actual sort of thought of it. So, but the reaction that he might have is different to how I would. So to be able to think through what you want to do and do things deliberately, I think is in response to a situation, I think is really critical. And then I think that final part is like having a clarity around like a vision, understanding, like being deliberate around this is how I want to live my life and trying to align those like tactical plans or day-to-day decisions. So having that in alignment with, I guess, the person who you see yourself being, or if you fast forward to the end of your life and you're looking back on it, you go, you know what, I actually lived quite an aligned life to the person that I wanted to be. Not always, because we're human beings and we're fallible. Um, and yeah, so just I think it's actually taking the core of our humanity and say, how do I bring that to bear? And this is not just a work thing, it's actually a whole life thing. So a long answer, not maybe a little too long, but I guess that's just my personal philosophy around it starts with leading yourself more effectively. And part of that then is like, okay, well, what difference do you make? Not just for yourself. So you made £1 million and everybody else is losers. Well, that's not really great. What legacy have you left? How have you left the world in a better place? Because you can't take your money with you and your fancy houses and your cars and whatever. But the other things you can leave as a legacy that makes society better for those in your family or those who you've worked with. And I've failed miserably at times to do that. Hopefully, there's been other times when I've managed to achieve some of the things that I wanted to be. So yeah, leading yourself.
Interesting. And what the reason why I find your work interesting is because I think if you look at standard management type presentations or techniques, it's all about how you manage. It's all about how you manage people, and it's all about them. Where your work is involves understanding people, but actually it starts from you said there humanity starts from understanding yourself first, and if you can influence how you feel and your actions, your thoughts, you can influence others. I think I saw a quote in yours. I think emotions drive people, people drive performance, which obviously links in with that. And I find it fascinating. I think it's a really great way of thinking about things because actually it tells me that you can influence a lot more than you think because it's probably well, it's a question for you actually. Is it easier to influence yourself and your own thoughts, or is it easier to influence other people?
Um, I don't think either are easy, really. I don't think it's one more than the other. I think it's probably harder to um, deliberately try to influence others if you literally are struggling yourself. So, when I say these things, I always feel a little bit guilty because it sounds like I know the answers here and I, don't get it wrong still on a regular basis. Um, but yes, I think it's got to begin with you because I think it's really hard. And you've had managers in a life, and I'm sure I've done this, where manager will go, well, you should da 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 da. And like I've had thoughts in my head about other managers. I'm sure people have had that where who have worked for me and go, phrase from the Bible, heal thyself. You know, you know, you see a splinter in your brother's eye when indeed you've got a plank in your own. I think I think like true confidence and true strength comes from like a really good nuanced understanding of you, so that if maybe you get some feedback from people or criticism, you can sort of almost allow yourself that pause to go, actually, there's probably some truth in that. So there's you can see yourself, and that sort of confidence in your okay, I laugh at myself when I've got my panting dog face, or somebody at work sort of suggests that maybe your mind's is closed, or you've sometimes shied away from conflict or whatever. To acknowledge the truth of that is quite powerful for you, because you don't then have to defend yourself. You
Mm.
don't feel that sense of fragility that I'm going to break in the face of maybe what might be some truth. I think is really important. So I think the two of them go hand in hand, but I always struggle to think that if you aren't open for that feedback, and if you find it difficult to maybe sort of influence yourself a little bit, you're probably going to find it harder, because you're the expert at you. So theoretically, so you should be the person who knows more about you than
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah.
And if
Uh-huh.
you can't then manage you, I don't like the word manage, if you then can't lead yourself effectively, how the heck are you doing that with other people? Your knowledge around you and your self-regulation, how are you supposed to, regulate others and
Yeah,
know
yeah.
data about others accurately? I'm sure there may be people who might be able to do that, but I always struggle with that, and that's maybe my inner block around it. So I don't know if that's answered your question,
No,
Mark.
it
That's
has,
just
and why the reason I like talking to you is because I get ideas and off the back of it, and real life examples, and it's interesting now we talk about feedback because and I'm sure there'll be other people in the situation who perhaps lead businesses, or a very a senior person in the business. I get feedback all the time at home. I get feedback. I've had feedback this morning that I've not done the blinds. I've not done I've not cut the strawberries right for my 5 year old. All this type of stuff I get on a daily basis. But I don't get much feedback here about me because I'm the boss, and sometimes people might be too apprehensive to tell the boss. But I miss that accountability sometimes, and then having a manager, because obviously it's quite a lonely place being a manager. But at the same time, like you say, feedback is essential. How do you get that in a workplace if you are in such a senior position where feedback isn't part of your routine because you manage people and no one manages you? What do you say?
yeah. Actually, invite it is the answer. Now, I think when I say that, you've got to be aware of what's gone on before. So how safe do people feel to actually be confident enough that you're genuinely interested, if you've always bitten people's heads off before?
Yeah,
So that's not to say you haven't got to start, and you've got to maybe be open. Go, hey, I've gone through a bit of a journey with this, and I'm learning and whatever. So, if you haven't got the trust, then I'd still ask you to try and do it, and then see what happens from here. So there might be somewhere to start it. I've actually been working with an organization that I've worked with probably for the longest. Financial services, like accountancy business in Newcastle, and did a session with them just a couple of weeks ago on radical candor. I don't know if you've come across this. It's
no,
it's it's the book Kim Scott, and basically, I'll boil it down in a nutshell. And it's about it's two aspects to it. Radical candor is about care personally, so that's the first element, and then challenge directly. So you're not helping people if you don't tell them maybe what's going on. So, but like if you come out to loo and you've got your flies down, then it's uncomfortable, but actually tell people. They
yeah,
need to know. But at the starting point is you're doing it from a place of not to upset and embarrass them. You're doing it because you care. You don't want them to feel, daft, or other people think that about. So that sort of thing. But one of the things that Kim Scott talks about is um, that radical candor, the starting point. So before you even go out your way to give people either caring or developmental feedback, is you've got to invite it yourself. So you as a leader have to go, I want you to tell me, you to be radically candid with me. So don't be mean. So again, care, but you're doing it because you're helping me be a better leader. And then you're giving me some feedback, even if it's tough. So invite that in and say, how can I make that part of my routine where I get regular feedback about how I lead? And that might be start in safe space. It might be with your family, if they're the ones who you trust and love the most. It might then be with like somebody who's a peer of yours, who's like somebody who you know maybe doesn't have a horse in the race, is doing it from an independent point of view, and you trust their judgment, you trust your boss, ask your boss. And then it may be, when you're at that point where you're starting to get feedback, you may want to spread that out to people who work for you or customers or, trusted mates, that type of stuff. So the more knowledge you have about you, the chances are you've got a better opportunity to use that knowledge to be able to do that. Now, that doesn't mean you've got to accept every bit of feedback,
Mm.
because I did a 360 feedback once, and obviously it was anonymized, apart from one person who was my boss, because it levels it so you can see whether you get different results from your boss, your peers, people underneath. So really interesting that. And like there was some feedback in there that I went, oh my goodness, yeah, no, I knew that, but this was like a stark realization of that is the truth of me in terms of procrastination and whatever. And that came out because I put stuff off and then I had to examine why I procrastinate. So it leads you to some good places. It hurts still, but it still leads you to some good places. There was other stuff because it was anonymized in some of the comments. Like I just couldn't see it. And I asked a couple of other people, I said, do you see that in me? A couple of other people who I thought would tell me the truth, and went, no. So I did a bit of assessment on it and I thought, okay, I'm going to take the 80% here and this 20%, I still just don't see that. So it's not to say I've never done that, but I don't think that's a reflection of me. So, so still there's an element of like judgment with it, but I think you've got to be open to it, even if it hurts.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I think that
yeah.
I would suggest people to have a think about what would being open to feedback look like for you.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, a lot of people to be listening to these sort of podcasts are on the journey of personal progression and are doing, listening to try and bet themselves. Um, but I really hope this conversation sort of challenges people to really sort of think about their emotions and how they feel. And I don't think that comes naturally to people. And I'm going to stereotype here, but I don't think it comes naturally to us blokes for typically. When did obviously you've gone from a journey of working in human resources to doing this in terms of working with businesses now and working with people in businesses and the emotions and getting to be more efficient. That emotions drive people, people drive performance part. When did you sort of realize that this was your calling? I'm going to say now.
You know what? I was 46, right?
Okay.
And like so when you were talking there, I had a whole series of like emotions. So there was a bit of excitement, there was a bit of shame, um, uh, and there's a bit of like anger and frustration. So I just felt all of those things like right there. But like I was 46. So the frustration is that like and I'm going to say, like, a point the table. Why didn't anybody tell me? So I went on a course when I was 46, right? And I'm not saying I wasn't aware of emotions and all that type of stuff, but I think I did avoid particularly and quite loud or like emotions that were associated with aggression. So, when I was under threat, I would typically withdraw. I would go cool. I'd put on like in situations where it was fun and friendly and social, lots of emotions, letting those out, engaging. But when I felt like, particularly in HR, you're under threat, risk of tribunal, all that type of stuff, I would have like the cold face. I'm not saying I wasn't at sometimes caring, but there was a lot of times I went into like neutral professional mode. So this course I went away for a week long thing with a company called 6 Seconds. They're based in the US, largest global emotional intelligence network. Um, and I remember saying to my wife, oh my God, I hope it's not sitting around the campfire telling sad stories and weeping type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'd gone there, to do some assessment tools about emotional intelligence. My idea was like, I need some tools to do this to people at work because they need some of this.
Mhm.
And oh my God, like I come away and I remember coming back from the course and talking to my wife. And a lot of it was about like tools and about the methodologies and about systems. But in order for you to access those, you really needed to like look inwardly. So it starts with you and go, oh my God, this is why I avoid conflict. This is why, like in these situations, I do this. And that leads me to dwell on it and like gives me, not a physical ulcer, then a metaphorical ulcer, a life full of anxiety. And I still have some of that. It's not saying I've eradicated it, but learning how emotions were like not only shaping me and how I felt and my well-being and how I did my job, but actually like also like how I projected at certain times. So hopefully, so there was a lot of the times when I was good to work with, and there were other times when I don't think I was bad, but I was probably hard to reach. So I was doing a disciplinary with somebody, I'd go, I've got to be professional here. So maybe trying to follow them, the mechanisms I thought that the right way to do it was in a calm and neutral way, but I was still dealing with a person. And even if they'd done something wrong, and I'll use that term just for a shorthand way, I don't like it, but just to give that impression, like they still were probably feeling lots of emotions, but also I was scared to feel their emotions with them because I probably would be overwhelmed and I wouldn't be able to cope. And so there was times if even if I was, there was some empathy deep inside, I wasn't being able to channel that effectively in that situation, which led to, yes, they might have got a disciplinary warning at the end of it. Nice, tick at the end. That was like, that was done in a
Mm.
fair and a neutral way. But it left the third person probably feeling not really listened to. And
Mm.
even if they were, but in a dispassionate way. They didn't feel listened to, even if they were. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? So
Yeah.
when we say feelings aren't important, that's the feelings are the lens in which we look through our lives. But I'll start with me, which is, there were times then if I was feeling compassionate towards that person, I didn't show it.
Hmm.
So when I said about shame and stuff, so there was that. So coming away from that course and talking to my wife and my reflection on, relationships with family and work as well, I think she thought, oh my God, he's been brainwashed. He's been to some sort
Yeah,
of
it was this.
cult, and not in a change, but it just like, I think it was just, I think I was overwhelmed. It, it was just, it was like somebody had opened a different door and and the way in which I looked at myself and the way I looked at the work that I did was was changed in that moment. And I can feel like the power and emotion of that moment. I was trying to put myself there and thinking, oh my goodness, this is something that I've got to do. Now, so it was like, okay, I still did it and was trying to work on myself, but then trying to do stuff with people at work and using some of the tools and, really trying to like work with people, coach people, teams, that type of stuff. Not on the bits that they were already amazing at. So this was a predominantly tech business, but obviously you've got like marketeers, accountants, customer service. So you're working with a range of people. Because they're humans, because I couldn't teach them anything about the technical skill, and that's not teaching is not the right word, but I could help and support them as I had and try to actually maybe give them an epiphany or even like moving forward in some of the areas that I struggled with as a Geordie bloke, 46 years old, but northeast of England, traditional, way of thinking. But it's crazy. It doesn't make biological sense. We've got our, thinking brain, which is what 20,000 years old in its development, as opposed to, 20 billion year, whatever the planet's been in place and humans have grown, that's been there. And yet we teach kids in schools and we grow as adults in organizations all on our IQ or thinking brain or technical skill. But that's not the bit. That's the new bit. That's like the child, almost like in its childlike infancy, or thinking brain or feeling brain drives us every single day. I'm going, why didn't I consciously know this in that way? And some people might say you're stupid because you didn't. But yeah, so you can see I'm getting a bit animated about it. That was the starting point, and that was 2017. And that led me to a place where I'm quite a naturally cautious person. Like I'm quite considered small steps. I'm quite risk averse. And okay, it took a bit of time. So I made sort of little inroads and steps that probably eventually where, wasn't, I guess it was ultimately my decision, but it probably led to a circumstance that led it to where I was either forced myself or maybe forced the organization or other people to put me in a position where I went, I've either got to go back to my old job, um, or take a risk. And this was like 2020, the end of the pandemic sort of stuff, where people were still in lockdowns, to actually set up my own business then. I never thought I was going to do this. Um, I just didn't see that being on my career plan. So I'm sort of giving up all the security of an HR career that probably could see me through to retirement and probably a nice pension and all the nice things that go with this. And I was doing this madly scary thing of going out on my own and seeing if I could afford it, and like telling my wife, I want to just quit my job and do this. and it just, yeah. So it led me to a scary place, but a managed scary place, I think.
Yeah.
So lots there, Mark, and I'm sure you got some questions. So that
No,
that hopefully that answers what was a simple question, and I've turned it into a 10-minute
no,
rant.
it's and it's good context, and I think what I'm curious about is, well, and I guess this wasn't. I know obviously you went on that course, and obviously that changed the way you thought. But I imagine you didn't change overnight. You know, that was just it put you on a
Yeah.
course to change. What what do you think now is the main difference between you at 45 and you now? And what I mean by that is, I guess when things happen, and if I think about the first question I asked you, you paused and thought about it. You didn't just dive in. Is it a case of you reflect and you go inwards first, or is it a set of skills you've learned without sounding too Liam Neeson there?
Yeah. It's a combination of both. Um, so when I say that, um, because our thinking brain and our feeling brain work in tandem. So this isn't going, don't think anything through, just let your emotions rule you. It's not that. Um, it's about bringing your emotions to the fore and using them as information and data to help make decisions, along with some of the tools and the tips and the techniques, the process bits.
Mhm.
Here's a model, think, feel, act around behavior, or there's a one around exercising optimism, which is about using optimism bridges and some research there and some mechanisms for that, but aligned with like what's your gut instinct telling you? Because I think that emotional part of the brain is actually linked to, your digestive tract and your gut.
Yeah.
That's actually gut feeling. So you've got some of that good thinking that goes with a feeling. But if I just had to identify one thing that's a very personal thing, um, I talked about like anger and stuff and like, struggling with some of those. In conflict, I would withdraw, and that was a pattern that I would know. I am now better able to have conflict. So if you think emotional intelligence, oh, it's about being nice. How are you doing? It's not that. For me, it's actually addressing things more directly. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at that. But even at home or even like in work context, like if I'm in a session and somebody's like, maybe I'll challenge. I would have really struggled to challenge like difficult behavior that I felt was, sorry, behavior from others. Maybe that was difficult for me. When I now feel anger, I'm able to go, what is anger telling me about the situation? I feel like this is, I know that the biological purpose of anger is my way is blocked, and anger is there to help you overcome that because you need the energy to attack at it. Now, if I keep that anger inside, that's energy fizzing around inside and it's harming me. It's like that metaphorical ulcer because I'm not doing anything with the energy of anger. So I'm pushing it away. But anger is useful because you need it to achieve your goals, to overcome your barriers. So for me to be able to go, it's really interesting. I'm feeling anger. What am I feeling anger about? What is it giving me? Well, it's giving me knowledge, some things in me way, but it's also giving me actually a physiological energy. So I need some of that because I need to get on with this project. I need to have that conversation with that person. I need to, but not in a way that's going to have me screaming and yelling at them, but neither, which isn't good and probably not going to be productive. I can give it a try. Even then, that might be the first time they knew that this mattered to me. So there's still a good outcome for this, even if there's maybe lots of other bad ones. So I don't want that, but I want them to know it matters to me, but without losing me shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that one thing I think is the biggest thing for me to be able to speak my truth in a way that is supportive of me, but hopefully is supportive of others too. But again, saying that I still don't always get that right.
And I guess the challenge we have is we're inbuilt in us is that fight or flight, and I guess that they are opposing responses where you run away from the problem, or you realistically you probably hit it too hard, and I guess that's why you get two different sets of people who do two different sets of things.
Yeah,
It's trying to get that middle of the road, I imagine, where like you say you're confident in confrontation, but you don't actually there isn't a tiger in the room, so you just have to be confident you can have that conversation without the fear of because I guess if I think of my own point of view, sometimes I have avoided confrontation because I've not wanted to upset them. And that, and I imagine there's probably similar people. You get people who are okay with that. And you get people like me, I guess, who have probably avoided that for the wrong reasons because you've not wanted to upset someone. Naturally, sometimes they need that hard truth in the
Yeah.
right way.
Yeah. So it's about making a deliberate choice because there may be times where avoidance is the good thing. And the obvious one is like, you're in a bar and somebody's acting like an idiot, you know, and it might well be actually it's him and his mates and there's just me here, whatever. It makes sense to just, it might be okay. You're thinking it through and you're making a conscious decision to do it. Or even in a meeting around a table, there might be times where this is really het up. There's a lot of tension. I'm aware of this tension. This situation needs addressed, but I'm aware of my feelings or my natural pattern to avoid. Even then, I'm going to think about this and go, avoidance is the right decision to make here, but it's a conscious choice
Mm-hmm.
rather than an autopilot. So having an awareness of my natural response is this. I'm going to take a step back and reflect. You know what? Even after having thought about it, it's still the right choice here, but I know I'm going to address this way because I have a number of choices and I'm picking this one. Avoid followed by this action that's going to address this, with a one individual or two individuals, or at the next meeting when maybe things are a bit calmer. So it's just about making conscious choices, I think, is a core element of that.
It links into this, but can we go through a scenario, right? And this is the bulk of the people listening to this are manufacturing. So let's use a manufacturing scenario as an example. It's a morning 10 a.m. team meeting,
Yeah.
and there's always that one person who gets quite confrontational and is shouting at others, and that's become the norm and become the way that of the culture is. But actually, you are that person now. Once you're in a level where you can challenge that, what would you advise for that? Is it you do it there? Is it you take it? Do you know what I mean? Because I think there's lots of those situations, and we get feedback that sometimes those morning meetings are just too confrontational. Is that something to imagine part of your gig you come up against that type of stuff? Because I know you work within that arena.
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind is because I'm imagining with the manager, I'm doing a coaching session,
Mm-hmm.
and I would be going, "What are you feeling?
Yeah.
So, what are those feelings telling you about the situation? Okay. Um, so what options do you have? What do you truly want as an outcome?
Mm-hmm.
And then get them to start to think about that. Because I think this whole like advice thing is overrated.
Yeah.
Because, you know, uh, my advice is just how I would do it. I mean, completely incompatible, to, how, if I was Donald Trump and it might well be, well, this is how I would do it. That might be wholly incompatible with your values and what's important to you and how you want to be seen and remembered and all that type of stuff. So that always sounds like a bit of an evasion, but genuinely, I think that when I work with people in teams, the wisdom lives within them.
Right.
I'll give people some information, maybe here's a model, here's whatever, this is what potentially it means for me. I'll ask you a question, how does that land? What makes sense to you? You know, where would you want it to be? So like, on a scale of 1 to 10, if it's like going at the problem as opposed to softening the problem, I might be on a 7 and I might need to move it to a 6. You might go, no, no, I'm going to move that up to a 3 or, whatever. So because that fits you, that says something about, no, no, I want to address this and I want to address it now. That's important to me. Okay, so how you wanting to address that and you thinking that's important, how does that fit with what you want to do differently then? So we start to explore that. It's almost like individual and unique. Um, and whilst we might admire behaviors and traits of like leaders, and I think that's always good, but that leader, even the ones that we might admire greatly, will be flawed and like just to follow slavishly what they say is the right thing to do, I always think is a dangerous road to go down. You refine, but like based on what's important to you. But if you don't know what's important to you, how are you making a right decision then?
Apologies for interrupting this podcast for a very quick 30-second pitch of my business. Theo James are a specialist manufacturing and engineering recruitment search firm based in Cheetham in the Northeast. If you're looking for any staff or a new opportunity yourself, from a semi-skilled level right the way up to C-suite executive, then please get in touch. We have a specialist consultant in each discipline ready to help. I'm extremely proud of what we've built over the years, and I'd love to extend that service out to you. Thank you. Enjoy the podcast.
You don't know what your values are. You don't know how you want to show up in the world. You don't know those things. How the hell are you knowing that you're going in the right direction or not? So, listen to yourself. But in that 10 o'clock meeting, if I was working with the manager there, and it's a post sort of session, post event reflection, it's about sort of reviewing that with them and going, well, what might you want to try next time? What could be different? And they might well say, I'm going to stop the meeting and I'm going to go, Jimmy, Susie, can I just have a quick word? Or, look, let's have a chat about this. Or address it in the meeting. Could go, hey, you're obviously feeling, some intense emotions there. Can you tell me a little about what you're feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really, and then they start, and then can I ask why you're feeling that? So you're challenging them, but you're
Yeah.
not like
Mm-hmm.
calling them out or hauling them, in the office. There's literally probably hundreds of options you could try and refine that. And that doesn't mean you're going to get it right.
Yeah.
But emotional intelligence is that space to think and to pause and go, what options do I have? This one will give me probably a better chance of getting a better outcome, not necessarily a guarantee, because you've got it, you really learn through trying and doing.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn necessarily from having a chat with me. You might learn some new stuff, but the real learning comes from when you put that in practice and see how your knowledge or your trying something new is impacting the world. You first, how do you feel about this? I feel more confident because I don't need to have any of the answers. I just need to have maybe more of the questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Curiosity. Are you seeing, because are you seeing sort of the opinions change around, I guess, emotional intelligence? Because again, manufacturing, it can sometimes be a bit archaic, shall we say. I've seen a huge difference, I would say, in just management, the evolution of management over most industries, I would say, in the last 10, 15 years. Most people I interview now have a very different way of managing people than they were managed. And I
yeah.
think people are definitely starting to understand people and trying to understand people more. Have you seen that transition, would you say? And do you still have that difficult job when you first go into a company of trying? Does it feel like it's a win hearts and minds, or not as much anymore?
Um, yes, I think there is a shift, but if I can express a frustration, is it's just not happening damn quick enough.
Yeah,
I'm just it just feels like an irrational thing to ignore our biology. And I just think, and again, just put my HR hat on and going back, people would rather, all the cost of having to replace somebody who's left because, they haven't been managed effectively in their emotions, whatever. We've got managers still, doing daft things that have caused this. Or, even like somebody's taking you to tribunal and then it's cost you. So you're paying lawyers and you're paying like a payout fee and all of the emotional labor that goes from managers having to go through this and the people themselves. It's like literally tens of hundreds of thousands of pounds. And you go, oh, well, but we want to try and do some of this stuff that might help you prevent getting there. But it almost feels like you're selling them something that doesn't exist,
yeah.
like this penny nostrum
Uh-huh.
tincture that's going to help you
Tick
not
box,
not
silver
be
bullet.
ill.
Hmm.
So it's just for those people who maybe have a more, that balance is more on that thinking brain. It's at times it doesn't make sense to them. Now so I guess with emotional intelligence, it feels like there's a going out there and going, this is what it is piece. And then it leads to, so I think there is a change and I think it's growing. It's not just growing fast. We need to move that because technology is growing at a pace
Yep.
fast. All of this stuff is like, oh, it's going a million miles an hour, but our humanity is not keeping pace with the technology. And we're going to be left behind with these machines that are going to be smarter than us intellectually, but we're not developing our emotional brain that's keeping up with that. Um, so I just want you to think about that element of, yeah, it is changing, but it's not changing quickly enough for me. But when I'm going into companies, so what does that mean when I'm going into businesses? I guess the people that I'm working with, either one-to-one or with teams, that's not always the case because somebody hires me for a company and the people who are coming along aren't necessarily haven't asked for this or bought into this.
Yeah.
But I would say the majority of times the setup is good enough where those people already believe there's something to be said for it, even if they don't know what it is. They have an open-mindedness or an interest minimally, or even like an active, yes, I think that will make a difference if we do some of this. So when I actually get to do the work bit, I think there's already a door that's already ajar rather than because I'm not saying I don't want to push at a door, but I guess there's hundreds, thousands of companies, in the region, never mind the country and never mind the world. I haven't got time in a sense for trying to bang on doors of that are permanently locked to this. So
Yeah.
if anybody's watching and that's you and you think there's nothing in this emotion stuff and we're not human beings, then don't contact me and I don't want to hear from you. You'd be wasting my time and yours. But if you're out there and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is the bit that could actually help me and my
Yeah.
team and my business transform, not through having better processes, but helping people adapt to the processes better because of how they feel about it, then you're somebody that I'd love to hear from. And even if you don't know, you're a bit scared or you're unsure, or you think, actually, well, there might be something in this, but overall, I think it's horse shit. I'm even okay with that. I don't mind that because there's still a bit of, oh, it seems a bit of a nonsense, but I'd like to know more. That's fine. The door's ajar a little bit. Then come and talk to me. That's the bit where I love to explore and understand and work with people. And if it's still not right, that's fine. You got priorities. Yeah, your new Excel training or your development to be, next level accounts. All good, all important. But the bit that might help you overcome the obstacles when you get that difficult exam and when you feel down and you've got that resilience will be your emotional intelligence or your optimism ability or your intrinsic motivation. It'll be that bit that'll help you overcome those things. It won't be a technical skill, I can guarantee it.
Yeah, 100%. Do you? I think there'll be a lot of people driving in, right? Driving to work, listening to this, and they're maybe doing some sort of self-reflection because I just think we go through our daily lives without really thinking about things, and just in it because we're people are a lot busier than they used to be. I think people work probably far too much now. For you, and I don't want to use the word advice, but what
You've learned, well done.
is it? Is it important? What can people do? Is it important to just literally take some time and think about situations that they've been in, almost self-reflect, or is it a journaling piece, or are there any sort of
Yeah,
activity, anything they can do to sort of get start themselves on this journey? Would they say?
yeah. Um, use technology. So it's not like I'm averse to technology. I think it's really important. I think it can help. So there's a number of different ways, and this is why I love it where people take the information and then go, okay, this is how I can do this. Because if I said journaling, some people go, oh my God, I hate to
Switching
journal.
off, yeah.
It's
Uh-huh.
just not for me. I'll just not do it. So
Yeah.
what the hell's the point? I'm going to say I'm going to do this because it sounds like the right thing to do. It's like, oh, I'm going to go on the treadmill in the gym, but I hate the treadmill. Guarantee you're not going to keep on doing the treadmill in 6 months' time. You're just
No.
not. So do something that you think is doable for you. So, but yes, some people like to journal. Some people like to say, right, okay, when I'm feeling I've got clenched fists, I'm going to notice the clenched fist and I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to stop myself and I'm going to pause in the moment to go, what am I feeling? What might I do differently? I used an app it's called How We Feel. I'm not part of it. I'm not connected to it, so I don't get any money from me signing up.
Oh,
Obviously,
2% for discount, yeah.
read the terms and conditions. I think it was developed by a guy called Mark Brackett, who's a researcher in the US. And it's really great because you go in and it says it's just this scale. You've got like I don't know about 20 emotions or something in each quadrant, and each quadrant is based on how intense they are and whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. And so you've obviously got high intensity, high unpleasantness, high intensity pleasantness, or whatever. And there's a number of so you do that, and like throughout the day or at the end of the day, you can just go in and go plink, plink, plonk. These were the emotions I felt today. And then normally, like afterwards, it'll give you a little video. Oh, this is a challenge. Here's a little 30-second video on something, and gives you a little bit of help about what you might want to do, what's going on. But then it gives you like a nice, like reflective piece, and it'll say, oh, do you realize you've had like, a shed load of anger this week and, not much joy? Oh, really interesting. So where did I find me joy? You know what? That was when I was working on this project with this person. Why? Why is that joyful? And why is the anger coming from here? So you're starting to use the data of your emotions to help you reflect. Now, great if you can do that in the moment. Sometimes you can't because you're so overwhelmed, but on reflection, you go, right, okay, now that I have that data, so in those situations when I'm angry, what is in my way? Well, it's this or it's this person. I now need to address that. I need to make and address that in a way that is going to be different because the way I've been doing it is going to create the same outcomes. I'm going to try this to see if it gives me a different outcome. So just for that, does that give you what you're
Yeah, it
looking for
does.
in terms
Yeah,
of
it
that
does.
one
No,
example that
100%.
might
I think
help
it's that,
you?
this stuff will have opened people's mind, and it's kind of like, okay, where do I start? And I think that's great. I think just starting with yourself, starting with yourself and how you feel, and that self reflection piece is huge. I've got one final question on emotional intelligence, which is a selfish one, but I can't ask you this because it's something that I battle with, which is, and I ask it because I want to ask it. Why do I why do I act differently as a parent than I do a manager? Because they are very different. The way I deal with situations at home with my young kids versus situations in here where I bite my tongue a lot more, and they're not family. It is very, very different. Is that a common theme that you have? What do you say?
Um, Is it a common theme? Not always, but I think have heard, and there's a lot of people say that they're different from. So I don't want to make this into a coaching session for you, Mark, but actually, if it's for you, I would invite you to think about, so why do you think you respond differently in a home environment to a work environment?
Yeah, it's, and I think it's because of the way I was brought up in quite a strict environment, and if I did something wrong, I was told quite sternly. Versus the way I was managed, I've never really had that sort of management. So I've always thought, is it just you go to what you know? Because I definitely have a not a short fuse. It sounds wrong, but I definitely have less patience at home than I do at work, and I'd almost prefer to be able to not bite my tongue in situations of work and pick people up and hold them more accountable, and actually just have a little bit more patience at home. So I don't know if it's because of the environments I've been in that has enabled that has meant that's the way I deal with things. But
Mm.
it's probably a good self-reflection piece after this.
And you'd sort of look at that, and if we were working that, we would start to look, okay, so how does that feel to have those, two different conflicts? There's like a work you and a home you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful to feel like where I'm at today and how is this emotion landing?
Yeah.
One I've got to manage and one I just let out full pelt. I mean, it's in, oh, how does that feel? It feels like I'm potentially being torn you
Mm-hmm.
know, from one thing to the other. So what is like, the true authentic me? What does that look like? What's the vision of that? You know, how important is it for you to have one consistent way of approaching? How would it make it feel if you did? Okay, interesting. And then you start to go, okay, there might be times where if I'm this person, then that's closer to the true me. How can I bring that more to me home? And what would that mean in terms of like reining some of that in a little bit? And how would that help at work if you were giving out some more of that, true authentic self? What difference could it make to you and to others? So you see, there's lots of questions there
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
help you really explore. Oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden you've done the work and we've done it over 6 months and you're waking up in the morning and knowing with a bit more clarity about you, what's important to you, that helps you make decisions more easily because you're not having to weigh up the pros and cons as much because actually you have a clearer sense of what's important. And you know what? And the people around you, starting to go, this is what Mark's about.
Mhm.
Because not only are you articulating it, but you're behaving it.
Yeah,
So, you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden, it just feels like a more easeful thing for you and for others.
yeah.
So that's the benefit from maybe a business point of view, but a balanced point of view, that sense of like home and work. Yeah, I'm trying to bring the authentic self to all of those environments.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. No, thank you, mate. I couldn't have asked that. I've got some quick fire questions to end with.
Okay.
Um,
I'll try and give some quick fire answers, which I know is a tricky one for me.
it's probably a while since you've had one, but who was the best manager you've ever had and why?
Yeah. It's Jim Cohen. He still speaks to me now. We still meet up. We still have lunch. He's still my, I call me mentor, but he calls me friend, but he is my friend as well.
Yeah.
And um, it's because he cared. He kept on, um, I was going to say, my manager, even after he left the organization and he went off to do his own thing. And, he's in his 70s now. Um, and we still meet up and he still pays for lunch, right? Which I always like, it's my turn, Jim. And like, I always felt like really bad because I never felt I could give him anything back because I always felt like the wisdom was all his. Apart from me jokes, which he jokingly, says he hates, but he loves them inside. But like I came to a realization at some point that um, the goodness and the care and the compassion and the humanity that he always, took that interest in me. I feel like I've got to then pass that down to others. That's my gift to him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, that's really important, actually, isn't it? And I think that is it comes back to the privilege of being a manager, the fact that we have in a real privileged position or in a
Yeah.
position of responsibility to pass that knowledge on. And I think that's why good managers want to manage and lead. Biggest influence from the business, entertainment, sporting world. Can't say Gaza.
Oh, you know what? And only because I mean, there's lots of people whose like actions and traits I admire rather than the whole individual because I don't really know, so I don't have any sort of rock star gods that there's a sort of a hero worship in that way. But so lots of people, lots of things. But actually, I was watching something this morning. I don't know if you know Mr. Rogers. He did a TV show in America from the 60s up to 2001, I think. And the film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is based on his sort of life. And he's just such an inspiring man. And basically, he had a children's TV show, but that was watched by adults. But really, it was informative and it helped children overcome some difficulties. So he went into some pretty dark places, but he did it in such a way that gave those children comfort and hope. Um, so if anybody wants to look him up, it's just called Mr. Rogers. And his view and his vision of life are one of like compassion and understanding, but also acceptance that, as humans, we're beautifully flawed. We're all going through this. We're connected by our shared humanity. And our ability to overcome this, we have, our challenges and our difficulties, we have this within us, but we can only do that where we work with each other and love each other. And again, are you looking after yourself and your neighbor? I think it's just a beautiful sentiment. So Mr. Rogers, look him up, and I think a lot of what he did still inspires me today.
Three things or words, first thing that springs to mind that make up a good leader, would you say?
Um, I would say an excellent leader, because who just wants to be good?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, oh, tricky. I think care, compassion, just for me, I think it's got to matter. I think your people have got to matter to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That if you're just in it just to do other stuff, whatever. The second quality, I say because it's a one that I probably lack, which is drive.
Okay. Yeah.
So do something that gives you energy. So drive comes from our internal energy or intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I say that because the first one resonates, but the second one doesn't. Um, I was going to give you two.
Two's good. Powerful
So,
too. Powerful too.
so compassion and drive are the things that I think I'd love to see in our leaders.
I like it. And finally, any books, podcasts, audio books, anything you ever listened to, read, which has had a real impact on you, would you say?
Um, I'm going to say like a non-work book, right? Because
Yeah.
it's my two books. There's a guy called Patrick Rothfuss, and
Mhm.
it's like the premise is like fantasy, so but it's not sort of what I call high fantasy. Um, but Name of the Wind in Wise Man's Fear. I think when I read it, there's just so much like human insight and a joy in which it's written, and the characters are so like well drawn and flawed, but also like they are excellent in the way that I think they inform and educate, but I don't think it's written in that way. So I love just some of the lessons around how you deal with fear and like our place in the world. So I would say read those. Um, um, Okay, so like I'll talk. There's lots of good emotion intelligence books, but the guy who wrote the first one, Dan Goleman, why emotion intelligence, why it can matter more than IQ. I would say just start there, and then there's tons. And if you want to drop me a line, there's other ones that I think add to that. And the guy Josh Freeman, who 6 Seconds, at the heart of leadership, so it's a really good book too. So there's lots. But I would say if you want to learn about emotional intelligence, start with Dan Goleman and then expand your range from there.
Love that. And look, just want to thank you, Paul, because this has been as powerful as I knew it would be, and it's a topic which is really important, and I knew it was really important to record this with you because you know your journey, like you say, when you're 46 and you had that eureka moment going on that course. A lot of people go for their lives and aren't lucky enough to have that, and I think it's really important to just to stop and reflect and really think about why and how we do things and the impact we have on others, and I just think we are a slave to our emotions if we don't take control, and that's what I've learned a lot of that from you in terms of really understanding that we are in control of what we do and how we think. But until we really sort of analyze that, then
Mm.
it's impossible because it just becomes a complete subconscious. So thank you so
Well,
much, Paul.
can I just say
Yeah,
one last thing, just for
100%.
people?
Yeah.
So I was at a conference earlier this week, and there were like certainly two or three like really great speakers who've gone through amazing adversity and like absolutely phenomenal. And I think we often look to people in industry and business, and we go, "Oh my God, like these people seem phenomenal," but at times it can feel like inaccessible because it's like, how have they got this superhuman
Yeah.
resilience or strength of character or whatever? So um, if I'm putting myself out there for people to listen to, I want to say it's like the story of an ordinary boy. And because I think most of us see ourselves as like, I think we're extraordinary, all of us, in terms of our individuality. But I see myself in terms of this working class background, my family. Dad worked in the breweries, mum, was a mum, but then dinner lady, and at times did okay at school, and then it was like, find a girl, settle down, get a job. It sounds like a Ronan Keating song, that doesn't it? And Cat Stevens. So you're sort of thinking that in terms of like having a career and you stick to your job and that's whatever. And the fact that I was 46 when I had this, I just see myself as like, yes, I've got some, qualities and all that, as we all do, but I'm just an ordinary guy. So if this sort of stuff is accessible to me, literally it's accessible to everybody. This isn't a tale of superhuman strength and overcoming that it is something you can't link to. I just want to say to people listening, this is for you. This can make a difference to you and the people around you. This is accessible. So please do look into it, just Google it, whatever. Talk to me about it if you want, but it's accessible and this is for you.
Love that. And look, you're a humble man, but you are great at what you do. And I've had amazing feedback from anyone that's ever worked with you. So obviously your details are there, and I know you're the bulk of what you do is business to business now, and across all sectors, and you are very qualified and excellent at what you do. So what's the best way for people to contact you, Paul? Is it LinkedIn typically?
Yeah, so I mean, if you put the details up there, I mean, you can put my email address up there. LinkedIn is probably one of my, on the most. So I don't have Facebook or anything like that. So like people go, oh yeah, you're using LinkedIn, your most used app. Sounds a bit sad, doesn't it? So there, I think, if you've got my mobile number on there, drop me a message or whatever. I'm open to just have a chat. And again, none of this is yes, I've got to earn money, and I've literally got to earn money. It's got to be a job. But actually, I do this because I love it, really making a difference for people in business. But I do have some sort of private clients too, is really important to me. So we're just going to sit down. If you do get in touch, there's no hard sell. I'm doing this because I love it and I want to make a difference. And if you do too, then to you and yeah, the life that you're living, then I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Thanks, Paul. That was great.
And thank you, Mark, for bringing yourself, for bringing your emotions and your insightful questions too. I really appreciate that.